Sophia Shakhovstova helps her brother-in-law repair her roof. A mortar landed next to her home where she has lived for more than 50 years.
I couldn't sleep. I was staggering around the house all night because of the noise of the shelling. When I finally got to bed early morning, there was a huge explosion. The window came crashing in. There was glass all over my bed. I was terrified. The last few days have got really bad again.
The United Nations says almost 10,000 people have been killed since the conflict between Ukrainian government forces and Russia-backed separatists started almost 3 years ago. The latest attempt at a ceasefire was in late December, but that collapsed a week ago. Shelling has been particularly intense around the town of Avdiivka. Victor and his family live in a nearby street. A mortar landed in their garden, destroying a section of their home. Victor has relatives living in rebel-held territory. He says the conflict has split his family in half.
Everything is unclear. My brothers live across the front line in rebel territory. I cannot fight. I cannot understand what both sides are trying to defend, and we civilians are in the middle.
In the late afternoon, the fighting started.
In the last 10 to 15 minutes, the shelling has started again. Both sides are blaming each other for the escalation in this violence, which is being described as the worst in 2 years. Charles Stratford, Al Jazeera, Avdiivka, eastern Ukraine.
Look, I think there's any number of things that are at play here, and it seems to be something that has been building towards this point for a while. If you read the statements put out by the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the OSCE, their special monitoring mission notes that both sides, both the Ukrainians and the Russian-backed rebels in Donetsk and Lugansk, have been starting to use some of the heavy equipment that was banned under previous ceasefires, that's not permitted under Minsk. You know, one of the things that's been very much noted here in Washington is that immediately after the phone call between President Putin and President Trump, the fighting accelerated and hit a level that we haven't seen for a very long time. So there's some suspicion here in Washington that this is a kind of push by the Kremlin to see whether or not we're going to get a good response, a strong response out of a brand new president here in the United States.
But as you just heard Dmitry Dutkochko say, that argument can work both ways, saying it's Poroshenko who could be testing the resolve of the Trump administration and of the West.
I don't think Mr. Poroshenko has much to gain out of attempting to push Mr. Trump on this. Most Ukrainians are frankly scared that the United States is going to abandon them, that the United States is going to remove sanctions on Russia for its actions in Crimea and Donbass. There's no reason for Mr. Poroshenko to push Ukrainian troops to try and test Mr. Trump, because he's afraid that Mr. Trump won't live up to that test. So I don't think that calculation really makes much sense, to be honest. I think that the Kremlin has a pattern of pushing until you hit steel, and they want to see how much they can get away with every new leader. So that's what I really think is going on here.
Alex Ryabchkin, let me ask you, our correspondent Gulliver Cragg saying that the heat was back on in the town of Avdiivka this Monday. What's the situation like right now when we have these freezing temperatures there?
Yeah, the humanitarian crisis was deliberately created in Avdiivka by Russian attacks, and it was really hard because the electricity was cut off, the heat system was cut off, and we called for a ceasefire just to repair the system. And while this fire was guaranteed by Russian side, our repair servicemen came to repair it, but they were killed shot dead. So this is why we don't trust any Russian world. We don't trust any Russian that they are saying that they are fulfilling the Minsk agreement. They don't, because the first point of the Minsk agreement is a ceasefire. We don't have ceasefire at all. And this is a forgotten war in Europe. It's not a civil war. Unfortunately, because of the election in the US, because of the refugee crisis, Ukraine went off the radar, and a lot of the people in France, I think, and all over the world, think that the war is over already. But it surprisingly came Avdiivka, and people started to ask, like, you still got this war with Russia? Yes, do we have every single day our servicemen die, our civilian die because of the Russian aggression? I have a lot of my friends or relatives who stayed in Donetsk, in Luhansk, because I'm from there, and I know exactly the situations from there. I know how many Russians are there. I know who are their commanders. It's definitely not a civil war. It's definitely the aggression of Russian Federation against Ukraine. And honestly, speaking about the Minsk agreement, whether to fulfill it or not, I personally think that the Minsk agreement is riding a dead horse, because we do have them, Ukraine respect them, and we have, for example, OSCE, who said that Ukraine respect the Minsk agreement, and we have full access for the OSCE people that, for example, the pro-Russian rebels are not providing. And if Ukrainian forces are attacked, we ask for a permission for an OSCE. We ask them, please monitor that we are under attack, and we request for this heavy weapon to be backed on the front line, to defend not only the soldiers, but the civilians. And you know the story about the British photographer who were interviewing the civil person, and the explosions went to the kitchen, and this person whom he was interviewing was dead, and he just lost his sight, and people in our doctors in Dnipro city saved his sight. So basically, it's Russian attack on Avdiivka, and definitely it's a test for not only Mr. Trump, but it's a test of the European unity. Whether sanctions would not be lifted because sanctions were put on Russia, not because Europeans and Americans are good with Russia, because we're good with Ukraine, because Russia violated the international order, and this is a test for the Europe, and this is what Putin trying to test.